Let's look at the next solution here, which is solution number 3 under the social transformation cluster. Deepen global culture of climate collaboration. So design venues where stakeholders, communities and religious leaders converge around concrete problems with researchers and scholars from all academic disciplines, with overall goal of initiating collaborative action to mitigate climate disruption. So this terminology of climate change, climate global warming to climate change to climate disruption, as I mentioned in the first chapter, has evolved based on the impact and actually comes out of organizations like the American Meteorological Society. So this is saying deepen, which means exploit what already exists and what is growing and make them more ubiquitous. So in terms of making change, just finding what's wrong is always not the best way. To see what's working and to grow them works better, and you can find good examples in the book called The Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, or Dan and Chip Heath, that I mentioned in the context of the elephant and the rider, right? So here are some examples. Climate Heritage Network. Culture and heritage sectors are mobilizing for climate action. Okay, we are launching our action agenda at COP25 Climate Heritage. So COPs are conference of parties, part of the negotiations under the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Each year they are held in different places. I think last year it was postponed because of COVID and then held in Madrid, I suppose. And then we talked about the book, the papal encyclical by Pope Francis called Laudato Si, where he talks about how we are not dealing with separate problems of poverty, disparity, inequality, food security and so on, and climate change, and in fact they are the same thing. Again, it's not about us being religious or not, it's about how to engage global human in action. If the message comes from the source they trust, they find credible, and they find the message salient enough, then they actually follow the words of their leader. So you need their community leader, their religious leader, their political leader, and so on. Okay, so the governance cluster then goes into solution 4, which is about scaling up sub-national models of governance and collaboration around the world to embolden and energize national and international action. Okay, a good example to start with would be to look at the emissions from cities. Cities only occupy probably about, I think, 2% of the area around the globe, but they probably emit something like 30 or 40%. You can look up the number in the book, but it's disproportionately high, and you can see this example, this from Scientific American. Sorry, I forgot to put it, but here are 10 countries with largest carbon footprints shown, along with the 3 urban clusters that contribute most to the emissions. So here you have the scale in million metric tons of carbon dioxide. So that's China's scale. You can imagine how much larger it is than the largest scale here. So within that you have Hong Kong, Guangzhou and Shanghai emitting such a huge fraction, and those are the domestic rankings. Guangzhou is the first one, Hong Kong is second, and Shanghai is third. You have probably not even heard of Guangzhou, but it's in, I think, the largest province of China, has amazing economic activities, probably also one of the richest. So you have other countries here, US with New York, LA and Chicago ranking in that order. Germany, Cologne, Berlin, Hamburg, Canada, UK, Russia, India with New Delhi, Kolkata and Mumbai. Okay, Japan, obviously, Tokyo is massive. Seoul is massive in South Korea. Tehran is massive in Iran. Okay, so what is the relation to scaling up? It turns out that the London mayor at some points called on other mayors to join him in action, and there are organizations like C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, which gets together for climate action in mega cities version 3.0. So 10,000 city climate actions since COP15 in Copenhagen. 3 gigaton cities have committed to reduce their CO2 emissions by 3 gigatons by 2030. 70% of the citywide action is financed by cities themselves. Cities tend to be highly dense. They are hubs of innovation. There is a direct relation between metropolitan population density and something like number of patents, for example. Okay, they attract people, the energy is high, pollution is high, transportation problems, housing problems, etc. But yet they are hubs of financial activity, so they attract people and create innovation as well. Cities have the potential to avoid locking in 45 gigatons of CO2, 8 times the total current annual emissions of the US. Okay, 1/3 urban policy decisions could determine up to 1/3 of remaining global carbon budget by 2020. We're already there. We should check that. 78% of all actions currently underway in cities are planned for expansion. That's not good. 70% of C40 cities report that they already experiencing the impacts of climate change. Not surprising. 51% of climate action delivered at a citywide scale. 260% increase since 2011. So cities are local scales, and now it has taken a global scale in terms of cities combining to work together. How do you go from cities to surrounding regions and so on? There is always competition for water, food and energy between the urban centers and surrounding rural suburb areas and so on. So you can see how the commuter miles can be reduced, food transportation, etc. Right? So action can be grown around the cities to the national level and to global level. This is the idea of this solution in this cluster of governance. Okay.